Hello and welcome to the Layers podcast. I'm your host Tayo and I'm so happy to have you join us today. The heart behind the Layers Network and podcast is to see people grow. So each conversation we have is designed to have something in there just for you. And I hope that that very thing that you take away equips and empowers you to broaden your thinking, your network, and your personal influence. So whether you're at home, in the car, or on your daily commute, relax and enjoy the conversation. Hello and welcome back, everyone. Today in the guest seat, I have Toyosi. Toyosi is a self-love coach. She inspires women to love themselves, live their best life, be confident. And she's also a Phonak ambassador and the founder and co-founder of Amigo Charity and Keita, am I pronouncing that right? Keita Lagos, which is a fashion women's wear brand. So welcome, Toyosi.
Hi, I'm excited to be on here with you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on here. So tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm a self-love coach, inspirational advocate who focuses on inspiring young women and girls to be the best versions of themselves, to be more self-aware and to be resilient. And the reason why I want to do that is because growing up, I felt like I didn't really have anyone to speak to. I didn't have anyone to look up to. And so for that reason, I want to give women what they didn't have because the future is female and we truly have a lot to offer. Alongside that, I work as a Phonak ambassador. I create content for children or young people or people in general with hearing loss and provide tips. And then alongside that, I have my own charity, which is sort of like going through the whole rebrand process at the moment. And we just focus on making the lives of people, specifically Nigerians, better and just improving the standard of living in the world. And then alongside that as well, lastly, I am the co-founder of a fashion brand called Keita Lagos, which focuses on bringing Africa to the fore.
Yes, I feel like I should insert like clapping cheers. You have a lot on your plate, everything everything after the other sounding more and more amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
That's so exciting. How did you get into, actually, let's start off with the clothing. How did you get into that? And why Africa to the world?
Okay, so at first when we started off, a lot of people say that like you won't be able to find your brand identity until like you actually start the business and get to know your strengths, you get to know what you truly want to offer. You get to know your audience, you build your audience. And so from that, we were able, because I co-founded it with my sisters, and we were able to come together and be like, okay, there's a lack of diversity in the world in general when it comes to Africa. And so for that reason, we want to give people in Nigeria that quality, service, quality clothing to just make women feel beautiful in general. And I feel like a lot of people go elsewhere to source for fabrics, tailors, but we do everything in Lagos. All the fabric,
fantastic,
manufacturing, the machines, everything is in Lagos. So it's all about just giving people that quality. One time someone asked me, they said, in the Instagram comments, they said, my God, like, are these clothes made in Lagos? And so that's the kind of reaction we want. Because when people see clothes that are made in Lagos, they're like, it's either that it's so expensive or it's either that it's just bad quality.
Yeah.
But I want to give people that good quality and for them to still be able to afford it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because I was going to say, I think there is this idea growing up in Nigeria that anything that is imported is better. Yeah. And anything that is Nigerian made is just inferior. So I really like that you're part of that changing narrative. How did you Did you grow up thinking that too? Because I feel like when I was growing up, it was very much the same as if the clothes were from London or America, it was like just better than anything you could find back at home.
Yeah, I did grow up thinking that. But I think what helped me shift my perspective was COVID-19. So I go to uni in England, but I had to come back in March.
Okay.
And so, I came back, like my parents told me I was coming back on Saturday night.
Yeah.
On Saturday morning, but I was leaving my uni. I had to leave my uni on Friday morning. So it was really quick. I didn't have time to shop. I didn't have time to get things. And so what happened was that what happens usually is that when I go back to Lagos, I buy a bulk of clothes and then, I keep it in my suitcase and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sorted. But this time it was different. And so when I got back, I was like, okay, what do I do with my life? And then even though I had clothes in Lagos, I was just like, you know what? Why is this an issue like in 2020? Why can't like list about 10 Nigerian fashion brands at the top of our head without like, listing the usual people that appear at Lagos Fashion Week? I'm like, we need to switch it up. I feel like everybody has so much potential to offer the world, but
absolutely
a lot of people are just hiding in their shells. And so it was all just about believing in my potential, even if I didn't go to fashion school, or I still know what I'm doing, and I still I feel like experience comes through learning, or like learning comes through experience rather.
Yeah,
that's the word.
Yeah, fantastic. So you said that you work with your sisters.
Yeah.
How tips? Because I feel like I work sometimes like with my mom, I help her out with her business, but I don't know how families actually work together, like in the high pressure arena and everything.
So I think that doing Keita with my sisters has helped our relationship.
Amazing.
So before lockdown, we were fighting, or during lockdown, at the start of lockdown, we were fighting, just over little things before we started Keita.
Yeah.
And so what we did was that we came together, and I'm a Christian, so I pray with them, and we will pray together, and from that, we were able to grow our relationship and get to understand each other.
Yeah.
Get to understand, for instance, I feel like, let's say my sister does something to me and then it irritates me, and I'm just like, oh my God, like this is really irritating me. And then it got to the point where like we were fighting so much that we all had to sit down and say like, look, why is it that this is affecting you so much? Why can't you let it go? So I would sit down and ask myself, why can't you let it go? Because what I think of when it comes to doing business with family is that in the grand scheme of things, those little fights don't matter, and they shouldn't matter. We need to look at the bigger purpose in everything. And so working on our relationship, when let's say my sister is rude to me, let's say she's in a bad mood, I'm just like, okay, she's in a bad mood. You don't need to make it a fight. You don't need to be like, why are you doing this, or why are you treating me this? So it's all about putting aside our differences for the good of the business, but also working on our relationships as well. So it's not just neglecting everything.
Yeah. That's really good advice. I'm going to take some bit of your advice as well, because I felt like during the lockdown, my sister and I were fighting a lot too. It's just something going around. So is your sister younger or older?
They're both older. I'm the youngest.
I see. I'm the youngest too, so I completely, I can just picture it already.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really great. Okay, so I was going to ask about Amigo charity, because I went to the page. I was like, I actually find this very interesting. Tell us some more.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, I started Amigo charity in 2015, and everything was going well. Like it was all going well, but I think I started A-levels, and then I wasn't really in a good place mentally at that point in time. So I kind of just left everything. I was like, you know what? I'm not doing any of that again. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And then this year, I still had the purpose and I still had the drive and I still wanted to help others, but I was like, please, like, God, just give me this drive again. Like, let me I feel like a lot of people have creative blocks, moments where you're just like, I don't know what to create. I don't know what to do. And so when I started working for Phonak, and I started in May 2019, so that was last year, and everything was going well. And then I decided to work on this project to raise money for children who are deaf or who suffer from hearing loss in Nigeria. I found a school, reached out to them, visited them, took pictures, and put it out on social media. And I'm like, this is what they need, etc., etc. And from there, I decided, like, this is what I love doing. I love helping people, especially in a country like Nigeria. I feel like we have a lot to offer the world, and the change starts from younger people. And so I realized, I was like, like, you were quite young when you started this thing, because I think I was 14. Yeah, I was 14. And so I was like, it's just so young. It's less about you, Toyosi. It's more about other people, and it's more about what can you do to help other people. How are you bringing them value in any way? What are you doing? And so it was from that project, working on the project for the school for the deaf, I was able to get that drive back. So now I'm in the process of rebranding, and I don't just want to focus on one project. Before it was mostly sickle cell that we focused on, and now I want to do a wide range of things just to help people.
Yeah, that's great. I feel like my advice is always just start, and you'll find your footing as you start. Definitely. There's so many brands that started off doing things that they were not meant to be doing, and it just evolved into something else. Randomly, I think I came across this video, and it was what are they called, the party strings that you spray and they come out like I don't know what they're called now. They're like party strings. You spray them and they just like fall about. This like confetti type things, and apparently they were actually made. Sorry?
Yeah, I know. I understand what you're talking about.
They were actually made apparently as spray-on casts. So if you broke your leg, you'd spray it on and it will form a cast. And it didn't work. People just preferred to use them for parties. And that's eventually what they ended up doing. So sometimes it's just, as you said, starting and then you find your footing. Okay. I want to move on to your being an ambassador for Phonak. But as I said in the intro that I recorded, with everything that's going on in Nigeria, I saw a tweet, and the person spoke about he has a brother who's deaf, and he said that he was once stopped by the police, but he didn't hear them calling him, and then they slapped him, and then he started making noise, and then they realized that he couldn't speak. So his brother was saying every time he leaves the house, he's scared.
Yeah.
And in Nigeria, with our population of over 200 million, I think Sage Journals estimates that it's about 23 to 25% of the population is deaf or hard of hearing.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's a topic that's really close to home, obviously, because I'm deaf, and growing up, I didn't really have any friends who are deaf or who went through things that I did. So that story alone hurts me, because I remember when the whole Black Lives Matter thing was going on, and obviously when you sign, sometimes to the policeman, it will look like you're like doing gang signs, and that's often associated with like violence and stuff, and so they will shoot at deaf people in America.
Oh my God.
This is painful, already from the color of your skin, and then to top it off with a disability, like you're almost an outcast in society. And with Nigeria, I'm hopeful. I think there's a lot of change that can come, but I think it's all about having open conversations and letting people know that it's not a bad thing to have a disability. Letting people know that society needs to be set up in a way that is more accessible to people like myself. We can't afford to just keep living in the way that we are.
Absolutely.
People post videos and they don't caption them, and it's like, even if you don't really have a predominantly deaf audience, still think of that one person. I always say this, when you have an audience, think of that relationship with that one person in your audience.
Yeah.
How are you bringing them value? What are you doing? Yes, you have, because I remember when I first started off as an ambassador with Phonak, I'm being honest, I wasn't captioning my videos or the videos on the story because I didn't think it was necessary. I was like, most people who follow me don't wear hearing aids, but what about the one person? I had to sit with myself and I said, Toyosi, you need, captioning is hard, it's stressful, but their disability, they have no way around it. We are deaf. I think there are other people that don't even have the ability to wear hearing aids. So they just,
oh, wow.
I have the privilege of being able to hear well enough to have hearing aids to support me, but some people don't. And so that's where it's people like to demarcate, okay, you have those who are like deaf, and then those who are not really deaf. And I'm like, we're all in the same group together, just because I may not necessarily need subtitles all the time, doesn't mean you should now exclude those who really need them, because what are they going to do? They stumble upon a video and they can't watch it. Like, imagine not wanting to use your phone, not wanting to go out because you're anxious, not wanting to speak in public because you're anxious, because I dealt with it for a long time. When speaking in public, I would get so anxious. I'm like, oh my days, like, I just feel like, because I have a really high-pitched voice, and so that also made me insecure. I was like, oh my days, like, I don't think what I'm saying is making any sense. I don't think people are taking me seriously. And I was like, no, the value is not from the validation I get from those people. It's from within me. So I think Nigeria has a long way to go, but
very much so.
I do think that Nigeria is one country that I want to focus on in my career and in my life, in my journey.
It's our home.
Yeah, it's our home. And, we have to have these conversations. And even when going out in for family events and stuff, you have comments like, oh my God, you're deaf. And then, there's slight pity or anything. And it's like, why are you making me feel bad about something I feel bad about? And so that's where all the insecurities are usually ideas of what we think other people think of us. But someone that to you is actually hurting. They're not perfect either, but they portray themselves to be. So everybody has their own battle. And I just think that the policemen and the government in general need to be more accommodating. We like to separate deaf people or people who have special needs or people who have disabilities. You have autism and then you separate them and then you make them feel alienated from society. They could have things that hearing people don't. People could have things that hearing people don't. And hearing people could have things that deaf people don't. It's just all about blending everybody. I think society needs to come together as one. All the diversity, it's like division, it's just not needed. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually want to, because you said you didn't have a lot of deaf friends growing up. I want to quickly talk about that, and then I want to ask you about inclusivity and how I actually think that in the discussion of diversity and inclusivity, that deaf people, blind people, autistic people, as you said, are often left out of the conversation. There's a certain aesthetic vision, if one can say, of what inclusivity and diversity means and what actually it should mean. So let's talk about growing up. So were you born deaf?
I actually don't know. I don't think I was. I don't know, honestly. I don't know how I lost my hearing. They just found out that, I wasn't responding as a normal child would. age of 4, and that's when I had tests. And then they found out that I had hearing loss, but we still don't know till now whether it was from birth or whether it was from the age between 1 to 3.
1 to 3. Okay. How did you, I don't know if you've spoken to your parents about how they manage that, because it's obviously it's not something that they would have been thinking about unless they had someone in their family as well.
Yeah. So basically I had this one friend, and I need to take my hearing aid batteries out with me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But for some strange reason, it's always when I'm out, like for an important function, that my hearing aids will die. And so let's say that day I didn't carry my hearing aid batteries, or I mistakenly left it at home, I will have this one friend who like carries my hearing aid batteries with her. So she has
that's sweet.
Yeah, it's so sweet. She has a spare pack with her. So I would say that's one way my friends accommodate me. And then the second way is through asking questions. People feel like they shouldn't ask questions. I feel like it just stems from the negative connotation that's attached to hearing loss. So it's like, oh, if I ask this question, maybe you should be sad. But it's like, I'm 19 now. I'm not worrying about whether like my hearing loss is a bad thing or not. I love it. It's the way I am. It's who I am. There's nothing I can change about that. So don't about embracing it. The third way is, I would say, when I'm in public at functions or at parties. I can't hear, or I'm having a conversation in a group, my friend will whisper to me, like, this is what was said. Let's say I'm studying.
I see. I love that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, when growing up, it was really hard. I was bullied. I would hide in the bathroom every like lunch break and short break and just not want to come out. It happened for like a period of time, like a few months, but it still it took a huge toll on me, and it had an effect on me, but it made me stronger. But what I realized was that like, because of that, I often like think, oh yeah, you have to go through bullying to get stronger and to get through, like, to own it. But I was like, no, this is normal.
It's just wrong.
I grew up in a country like Nigeria, but it's not normal. It's not normal to treat you like this. And so I had to sit with myself and said, yes, they treated me like this, and yes, they made me feel bad about my hearing loss, but does it really matter now? No. How can I learn from it? What can I take from it? And when speaking to my friends about it, they would say, oh, we understand, we are here. And so even though I may feel like you don't necessarily understand, you will never understand till you're in the situation. Just letting me know that you're here, just letting me know that you're here to listen and you're here to fight for me regardless of anything else is enough for me.
Yeah, I love that. I'm such a big believer in me, myself, and I as a myth. Everybody in the world needs someone. Like we're made for community. We need people. Like everybody needs the support. I wanted to speak about even, going through that bullying. One of the things I also believe is that people can do things and it's wrong, but now it's our responsibility to make sure that we're getting up, we're picking ourselves back up, and we're trying to be as strong as we can be. I wanted to ask about you said you were crying in the bathroom. That is actually really sad because kids are so mean as well that it's like, and I think also in Nigeria there's a stigma of being deaf, and even the way that we throw about phrases, are you deaf? It's kind of like, it's always a negative connotation. Did you find that there was a difference when you moved here versus back at home?
Definitely. There were so many things when becoming a Phonak ambassador here that I realized, this is not normal, or you don't have to be separated from society to find yourself. You can find yourself in society. You don't have to feel like you are alone, and you don't have to feel like you're just like this strange human being because you have hearing loss.
Yeah.
When I moved here, people were much more accommodating. They were educated. You know, I would go to shops and I would have the hearing aids on, and I would make sure I tie my hair up before I get to the till so that my hearing aids would be visible and they would see. And so when sales attendants would see, they will speak up louder or more clearly in order for me to understand what is being said. And even in terms of school, like the support was readily available. They would suggest this, or they would say, I think you should come and meet me and we'll sit down one-on-one. But in Nigeria, you had to do everything on your own. And yes, they would offer student support, but it wasn't really helpful. So I went from having to fend for myself and having to learn and teach myself to relying on someone else in A-levels and in uni. And that has been a really drastic change because I'm so used to not having student support. And I didn't have it in A-levels either, but I had to get it in uni because uni, you're in a school with more people.
Yeah, it's not tailored to you as well.
Exactly. So I had to just, reach out to them. And obviously with COVID and everything, classes are online. So what they do is that they get a note taker to take notes for me and send me notes right after. And it's tough, but I'm getting used to it.
I'm getting used to it. You're very resilient, it seems.
Thank you.
You're very resilient. I love that. So tell us about how you became a Phonak ambassador, and actually what Phonak is for people who don't know, who are just like tuning in.
Pardon, what did you say?
Phonak, how did you become a Phonak ambassador? And for those listening in, what is Phonak? What do they do?
Phonak is an international hearing aid brand. They provide different hearing technologies. So sometimes they have like the Bluetooth hearing aids, and then sometimes they will have the hearing aid batteries. They just have a lot of things. I think what they're trying to do now is focus on the social media aspect as well.
Okay.
So I work in that division. I create content for them. So we're called Phonak Hero Ambassadors. So we create content for people with hearing loss by just sharing our stories. So I was able to, how did I start working with Phonak? So this is actually a funny story. In 2018, I think in May or like June, I posted this picture, and I've always loved taking pictures. So like I've always been like, oh, I want to like take pictures of an influencer. That was just when I was younger. And so I would take pictures and I was like, oh, let me just tag Phonak. And so I tagged them and they saw it and they liked it and they commented on it. And the next thing you know, they sent me a DM and they're like, oh, we love this picture, blah, 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 blah. How about you send in an application form to apply for the job to become an ambassador? And I was like, so I sent it that was the next year.
Yeah.
They saw the picture a lot in 2018. And then in January 2019, I posted a letter to my hearing loss. So that was just me finally coming out to social media and being like, yes, a few people in my circle know that I wear hearing loss, but majority of people don't know. And I've never actually come on here to speak about it. So I wrote a letter to my hearing loss and I posted it, and that went viral and everyone was speaking about it. And Phonak saw it as well. Sent in my application, and then in May the contract was signed and everything was set and ready to go.
Fantastic.
So yeah, that's how I got it, and I was able to meet other Phonak ambassadors and like work with them. So we just basically create content. In January, I met up with my fellow ambassador. His name is Luke.
Yeah, I follow Luke actually.
Yeah. So and then we just basically came together and spoke about our hearing loss journeys. So I really, really, really love it. Like I don't think I would work for any other band. So yeah.
Amazing, awesome. Like I say, I actually follow Luke, and I think it's like what you were saying about, but what about the one when it comes to captions in your videos. I actually wrote that down because I was like, I don't have captions in my videos as well. But it's not something, as you said, that people are thinking of, which is actually really terrible. But I remember he posted something a few months ago, and he was just like, I think when the government in the UK said it's going to be mandatory to wear face masks, he was like, but how are people who are deaf going to lip read? And I was like, that is a very good question. And then that's when I actually was like, no, actually we need to figure this out. And that's when I was like, we need to start doing our research, because I've always thought about sign language, which we can talk about a bit later, and how I think it should be part of the school curriculum, because if there are 11 million people in the UK who are deaf or hard of hearing, there's really no reason why we shouldn't be able to communicate with one another, So I was going to ask about pandemic tips. How can people be more patient, especially when they're wearing face masks and they can't lip read and their voice is already muffled to some degree?
Honestly, I'm struggling. Like, this is me being vulnerable and just saying it. I am struggling. I have spent the past few months at home in Nigeria, so this is I'm having a hard time getting used to it. So what I do is that when I go out, I make sure I start of the conversation. I'm like, I'm deaf, I wear hearing aids, and I show them, and I'm like, so I need you to speak louder and clearly. And they're like, okay, fair enough, and they speak. So I think that really works for me, and that's the only tip that I have for now. If you're in university, I would say reach out to student support. Don't be afraid to do so, and get them to hire a note taker or get them to invest in captions. And then in terms of face masks, some people say that we should start wearing clear face masks, and it's true, honestly, but I don't know. Everyone's wearing, I feel like we're so neglected in society. So it's just more like I have to find a way to just work with what society does, which is really sad. But I think that's why we're fighting for change and campaigning for things and having these conversations, because, it's tough, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah. Thank you for being vulnerable. I think you're absolutely correct. I would really love, even with my platform, to really start thinking of ways to include, because I think it was during Black Lives Matter where, I don't know, brands and things are coming out and you're like, but Black people cannot be an afterthought for you. I think it's the same where people in our society who are deaf or hard of hearing can't be an afterthought.
Yeah.
Can't be an afterthought anymore. So on that note, I was going to say, where earlier on we spoke about how people avoid asking questions because they don't want to say the wrong thing, or they think that they're going to make a person feel sad. How important is it for non-deaf people to get on board as well?
It's very important, because non-deaf hearing people make up more than half of the world's population.
Yeah.
So it's very important, because you're recognizing that, okay, look, this doesn't directly affect me, but it directly affects someone in the world, and that alone is an issue. With all the SARS protests and stuff, you have people saying, oh, but I live here, so it doesn't really affect me. And I'm like, just because it's not happening to you right now does not mean that the person is happening to is any less privileged or any less valid. We are all human beings, and we matter simply because we exist. So we have to, it starts from hearing people. It honestly does, because I feel like it's all about being considerate. When you see other people, when one hearing person comes out and starts captioning their videos, regardless of the fact that they don't know whether they have a deaf audience or not, just being considerate enough will make, let's say randomly on a day, a deaf person will stumble upon your page and see your videos and oh wow, she captioned videos and she's not a deaf person. That's alone is being considerate, because it doesn't directly affect you, but you're choosing and you're making the decision to help others.
Yeah.
And I collaborated with a brand, I think for Deaf Awareness Month in September, and I recorded a video. And in the video, I talk about how people should caption their videos. And when they sent me, it was not captioned. And I'm like, I'm not posting this because in the video, I talk about captioning the video.
Yeah, you sent me a video without a caption.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, people it slips people's minds, but for sometimes I just feel like other times people are just being ignorant and lazy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually, I was going to ask, so it's some people listening in might be like, oh my God, I feel so bad. How do you encourage people to be like, don't approach this from a place of pity, but from a place of like, I actually want to change things? Like, there's no need for pity and sadness. Or do you think that there's no need for pity and sadness, but there's still a lot of room for empathy?
Yeah. Definitely. I think don't be upset and don't feel like I'm like calling anyone out. I'm not calling anyone out. I feel like
even if you were
saying this will make people it will make people uncomfortable, because you're like, oh wow, like I make videos and I don't caption them, even though it doesn't affect me, like it affects someone, and that alone matters. So just learn from it. I learn every day. I was a Phonak ambassador, but I wasn't captioning my videos.
Yeah.
So that was me before, but I realized this is an issue. Learn from it and try and figure out what you can do to make the world a better place for deaf people and just for people in general. It doesn't have to directly affect you for you to show interest or for you to invest your time and your energy in it. Do that simply because you care. And even if you don't necessarily care at first, like just research, find out what is that makes us upset like this. Why? Like when listening to this alone will help you see it from a perspective of someone who is deaf and what I go through. And that alone is helpful. I feel like the world in general, we need to look at things from different perspectives and not just ours.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a post last night I saw where it said, speaking on what you said about, people feeling like you're coming for them. I feel like even if you were, like, it's okay to be like, okay, I messed up, or I haven't thought about this, let me do better. It's like, even now, I just admitted to you, I actually don't caption my videos. So I think it's one of those things. I saw a post last night where it said many of us are haunted by the should haves. As human beings, we're going to make mistakes. It's normal. Hindsight is always 2020. And judging ourselves for not knowing or doing better has a higher chance of leading to resentment than growth. So you can feel remorseful or frustration, but allow it to teach you and guide you for your future actions. I think that's perfect. Thank you so much for the conversation. I feel like there's so many people that are going to learn so much from it. This is a thing again of like otherism. I literally didn't know that they were shooting deaf Black people in America. That is just, I feel like the world this year has just been so heavy, like from Black Lives Matter to COVID to isolation to everything.
But I think in everything, we have to just have faith and be hopeful about the future. Like, I think that, I always say this, and I'm not a pessimist, but I think that bad things have to happen in order for good things to come into fruition. Like, that's just my mentality. I always think that, okay, I need to go through this in order to learn from it and then grow as a person. And so I'm not saying that obviously like COVID happened because but I do think that everything that's happening in the world this year is as a result of just helping us see things from different perspectives. I don't think people in Nigeria have ever protested like they are doing now and just be like, enough is enough. And I think lockdown also helped us to sit with ourselves and realize there is a lot of injustice going around us. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of lack of
Empathy.
inclusivity in society. Like, enough is enough. We're fighting and we're taking back what's ours. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Before we end our podcast, I remember that I actually completely forgot, but I just remember now when you said inclusivity, when I mentioned before about like, so now a brand could be like, we're inclusive and we're diverse, and it would be a Black person, a white person, an Asian person, a lady in a hijab, maybe a girl with freckles, a girl that is plus size. I say plus size in quotations because I don't actually understand that term. I don't understand why that's a term that's used. And then I remember Maltese has actually had an advert ages ago, but I don't know if it's still airing. And it was like a silent advert, and it was featuring two women who were deaf, and they were communicating through sign language. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's just a perfect advert. But people won't say that that's part of inclusivity.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Like the adverts?
Yeah, ads, campaigns, or just in general, do you think about that when you see like in diversity campaigns?
I don't think they really involve deaf people. I don't think they do. I know there's apparently this movie that came out that was like Deaf You or something on Netflix, but like,
oh yeah, I saw that.
Angry, and I haven't bothered watching it. But
Yeah.
in general, even especially for people of color, they don't include deaf Black people. It's like a no. It's always the same white people, same white girl, same white boy. Like, we are tired. Okay, if you say diversity, like, actually be diverse. Don't just put one Black person there and be like, oh yeah, it's cool. Or don't just put captions there and be like, oh yeah, it's cool. Shed light on these things. Brands want our money, but they don't actually want to put in the work that comes with gaining their trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like, put in the work, hire more deaf people, hire more deaf Black people. It's important to do so because we have a lot to offer the world. We're really like, I really, really just want to look back at this particular podcast episode years from now and be like, yes, it's change. And yes, these things are actually coming into fruition because I know they will. They may take time, but they will.
I love that. It's that resilience again. You said that you're like, I don't know if I'm a pessimist, but I'm like, you're very optimistic. Like, you literally spend your days like encouraging women. Like, I'm always seeing people asking, so what foundation did you use? How do you and how do you deal with this situation? And you're always answering like all the questions.
Thank you.
From beauty to fashion to everything.
Yeah. That's like one thing I really love. Like, I love dressing up. I love looking pretty. I love everything. So I think that thing about brands, like hiring people and being like, oh, like for instance, like Fenty Beauty can decide to do a campaign. It's like, this time we're focusing on Deaf Awareness Month, XYZ, hiring this, hiring that, doing this. Things like that will change the world because you will find that there are so many people that are looking for someone to look up to.
Yeah.
And I promise you, I have people who, like women, young girls who are deaf, they will send me DMs, say like, oh my God, which years? Or like, oh my God, how do you get over this insecurity? Oh my God, how do you speak about your hearing loss? And I'm like, I want to show people the beauty in being stylish, doing your makeup, going to parties, living your life, living your best life. That's the word. And still having this disability. It should not hold back in any way. And what Absolutely. I think that a lot of people, like influencers, do is that they're like, oh, ask me this. And then when the person asks, like, you don't reply. I want to focus on building relationships with my audience. And
Absolutely.
Sometimes it may take time for me to reply, or like if someone just sends hi, I usually don't reply because I'm just like, hi, but like, come with like a question or come with something at least, or hi, how are you, rather than just saying hi. That's just the way I am. I feel like my brain just is like, if you want to message me, like, this is like, I'm here for something kind of thing. But in terms of like replying in general, I think it's honestly really important to do so and just build relationships with your audience. That's one tip I would give anyone who's listening to this. Don't think of it as, oh, I have 5,000 followers on Instagram and like I need to like do things for all of them. Yes, you do. But when you think of your audience, don't think of it as thousands of people. Think of it as that one person. Build a direct relationship with someone in your head and be like, oh, this is going to help that one person. This is going to move that one person. And you'll find that that one person is sharing it with another person who is sharing it with another person.
Yeah.
But always just start from that one person, because it's not about numbers. It's all about quality over quantity.
Yes, preach. I should insert I literally still don't know how to do this insertion of audio clips, but I'm going to learn to insert it here and just be like, yes, preach. You know, one thing they said that I actually love is it doesn't matter about the disability. Like, live your life. Like, live your life. Society needs to catch up, because for me, I don't think disability is a disqualifier for anything.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a disqualifier for anything. And I love what you said about responding to every comment. There's this lady on Instagram. Her name is Phoebe Park. She does these like great like Instagram tips on how to build your brand online. And that's the one advice. She was like, you need to respond to your comments. You need to respond to your DMs and build relationship.
Yeah. Because how are people going to trust you in order to, let's say, if you start a business years from now, for them to invest in it? It's the same people you go to, but you don't read their DMs. It's not just about brand deals. And I've gotten like, honestly, I love brand deals, and you know, as brand deals come, that will make me feel blessed. But I'm also thinking of it from an eye point of view, like, okay, what do I have to offer to this audience except for fashion, beauty, and lifestyle? And then that's when Keita came, that's when Amigo Charity came, and that's when coaching came. So you have those three things on their own, and then everything else is like an addition to it. That's how I look at it.
Nice. I feel like I've really enjoyed our conversation, and one of the things I was thinking about was, with everything that you're doing, like there's so many people I meet that are like, but how do I know my purpose? How do I know my purpose? And I think everybody's purpose is and should be helping people, and figuring out what makes your heart beat and what makes you go for it. Because it's like I love how you've really been focusing on the one. There's always going to be that one that needs this. There's going to be that one that needs something. I really love that. Thank you so much.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for coming on. How exciting. I can't wait for this podcast to come out.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on here. Yeah, I really like this. And what you said about purpose being about like helping people and stuff, funnily enough, like the coaching session I did today was about like how purpose is like multifaceted. It's not just one thing. So yes, you can be a lawyer and you can have a 9-to-5, and yes, you can own a business. But let's say you have a really like good personality trait that's focused on like understanding things from different perspectives. How can you apply that to the world? How are you bringing value to the world? Are you just existing? Like, what are you doing? So
what are you doing? And there's nothing that is too small.
Definitely.
So before we sign off, you mentioned that you are a Christian, and you also mentioned that you were 90. I didn't even know that you were 90. I thought you were 21. I don't know where I got that figure from. Oh my gosh. You know what it reminds me of? There's a Bible verse that I found a while ago that I love. I think just being a last born in Nigeria, you and I, you know. So it's 1 Timothy 4:12, where it says, don't let anybody treat you as if you're unimportant because you're young. Instead, be an example to believers with your words, your action, your faith, and your purity.
I love that.
I feel like that is you. I feel like when I'm like, that is literally you. This verse is you.
Thank you. Honestly, I love that verse because I feel like over lockdown, I really built my faith. And that was when like I was able to be like, oh, I want to start coaching. Oh, Keita came about. Oh, I want to go chatty, because I feel like I was just there on Instagram, like taking pictures, but what are those pictures doing? Like, okay, fair enough, like people want to buy the clothes and makeup, but in the long run, like how are you sustaining that thing? And so what you said about age is so, like, it hits me because I started school when I was 4. I feel like I'm ranting.
No, you're not.
I started school when I was 4 and everyone else was 5 in my year. So I've always been a year younger than like my friends and my age mates and stuff. And in general, like, I think I've just had to mature faster. I feel like I'm still in second year of uni, but I have like so many things to balance. But if anyone is like worrying about, oh, how am I going to balance this with school? Like Taya said, just start, just do it, and just be the best version of yourself. I promise you, you will achieve your goals. Don't think about your age. That's one thing God is always telling me. Do not think about your age. In the grand scheme of things, like, your age does not matter. Like,
no, it doesn't.
All about what you know. Yeah,
it doesn't. Thank you.
No problem.